So I'm definitely on the autistic spectrum, albeit quite on the mild end. For me, it was more about I just didn't know. I thought I'm just a bit quirky in certain ways.
Welcome to the Network Plus podcast. In this episode, Support Services Manager Craig Welsh shares his personal journey with neurodiversity.
Empathy. I think I've had empathy and learnt it more and more, again, especially with having neurodiverse family members. But actually talking about how I'm feeling, which is one of the key traits of autism, not being able to express your emotion, I found that really challenging.
Craig's story shines a light on the complexities of navigating the workplace whilst managing undiagnosed autism and caring for a child with complex needs.
I suppose as a parent, you go through a number of different stages. There's a bit of shock, then a bit of denial, then a bit of what did I do wrong?
I'm Kat O'Brien, and today Craig shares valuable insights into the unique perspectives and strengths that neurodiverse individuals bring to the table. Hi Craig!
Hello.
Today I want to talk about neurodiversity. It's a huge topic for us as a company and also I think as the world at the moment. So I want to ask you, what does it mean to you and how you would define it?
It's probably quite a recent term. It's only been about 15, 20 years or so. I suppose if you sum it up in one sentence, it's almost like it's recognising that people's brains work differently and they react to the environment in different ways, and there is not necessarily any single right way for people to interact with the world and for how their brain to react. The other, I suppose, term that people are probably familiar with is neurotypical, and that tends to be historically what people thought. Everyone sat within a neurotypical box and everyone else that was outside of that was somehow significantly different.
Yeah.
But I think now the term neurodiversity has really opened up that spectrum that pretty much everyone's neurodiverse. Everyone interacts with the world in different ways compared to others. And it's just that some people, interact with it in a certain way. It doesn't necessarily mean it's the wrong way to interact. But yeah, it just makes it different.
It's just a spectrum.
Yeah. And I think historically as well, I think, again, when I grow up, I'm a 60s child ultimately, but things like that are caught within a neurodiverse umbrella, like autism, ADHD, dyspraxia, dyscalculia, even Tourette's, it was almost seen it's a disability, and I mean it can be classed as a disability, but it's not something that is necessarily curable or needs to be cured.
Yeah.
It's more about adaptation, either for the individual or for businesses.
Or the people around them.
Yeah, exactly.
To not try and fit them, what is it, the phrase, a square peg in
a round hole.
In a round hole.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's all about giving people the right space to be who they are, and the ability to just be completely themselves without fear. I remember this quote that I heard at school when I was younger from Einstein, who obviously we all know is a genius. and
probably neurodiverse.
And definitely neurodiverse, yeah. I think he had autism, didn't he?
I think
yeah.
so.
And it said that everybody is a genius, but if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, then it will always go through life thinking that it's stupid. So I suppose everybody has different strengths.
Exactly.
And people with autism probably have different strengths to someone who's neurotypical. And traditionally, before we had this phrase that we're using so often now, in a traditional educational format, those people were probably lost in the system a bit.
Yeah, and sidelined even.
Yeah. Exactly. And you've got
like
someone like Einstein who was able to excel and become this amazing mathematician and scientist, and then other people over the years that have had similar abilities and they've just been shut down.
So, I mean, if you look at some of the major business people in the world, not just in Britain, a lot of them weren't that successful at school, and it's because they were neurodiverse. Dyslexia is really typical among some of the really big business successes, the entrepreneurs. So yeah, it's definitely a case of how do you unlock that potential earlier and think about all the people that potentially have got that but didn't get the chance to have it unlocked. Like, I mean, people like Richard Branson, for example, he's one of the most famous ones as, you know, being dyslexic, but there's a lot of others as well.
Yeah, definitely. Well, our CEO is dyslexic and he's quite confident talking about that openly.
Yeah.
So, you know, that just shows another success story.
Yeah.
There's lots of people in our company that have come forward and said that they're neurodivergent in some way. But let's talk about you today.
Okay.
So how do you identify as being neurodiverse?
So I'm definitely on the autistic spectrum, albeit quite on the mild end. And I think I probably didn't realise that until, and we'll talk about my son Jarvis later, but yeah, it was until actually having a child who was quite profoundly autistic, and then you start to read up and do more research. So for me, it was more about, I just didn't know. I thought I'm just a bit quirky in certain ways, but then you see some of the traits that I know that I've got, that, and some of them are good traits, some of them would be seen as negative traits. But so for example, the good traits, yeah, the ability to hyper-focus, the ability to see patterns really easily in numbers. So if you go back to that sort of what's seen as neurotypical, I was quite lucky when it came to schooling that I was seen as, oh, you're good at numbers, you must be really good at all that stuff. So I was given all the, you know, all the attention that I needed. Whereas if it had been something different that was more my trait that I was expressing, I might have struggled more.
Right.
I think that the other key one for me is more around like a complete lack of ability to express emotion very well.
Really?
Yeah, I find it very difficult to talk about my emotions.
I don't see that with you at all. I think that you're very emotionally sensitive towards people, I would say.
Yeah, I think empathy, I've managed to, I think I've had empathy and learnt it more and more, again, especially with having neurodiverse family members, but actually talking about how I'm feeling, which is one of the key traits of autism, not being able to express your emotion. I've found that really challenging over the years. Even, you know, again, I've been treated for depression on and off for pretty much my whole adult life. And a lot of that was driven by anxiety. And then I think back now, well, actually, a lot of the anxiety could have been actually boxed off or settled if I talked about my emotions with someone instead of just bottling it all up, never asking for help. It's almost like there's a bit of retrospect and looking back on my life and thinking, yeah, there was certain behaviours I was demonstrating and still behave, albeit as I've got older, I found much better ways of coping with them.
Do you feel like it's a common misconception for people to think because people with autism don't express their emotions so freely that they don't have those same emotions?
Exactly, yeah. It's almost as it's back to the what's the neurotypical way of demonstrating your emotion. You'll talk about it, you'll cry, you'll laugh, and I do laugh a lot. So again, it's not always easy to put into a mini box like that. I think the risk always is as well that sometimes you'll watch Rain Man, for example, and you'll think every autistic person's a genius, like Dustin Hoffman dropped 5,000 sticks on the floor, and he'll tell you actually it's 4,998 because you've left 2 in the box. You know, that's the typical thing. You know, but there are savants, as they call them, out there in the autistic world, but a lot of people have just got, you know, smaller specialisms in certain areas, whereas some of the more what are deemed as negative traits are a bit more expressive. And the one I'd pick up on there is probably stimming. Have you heard of stimming?
No.
So
that?
stimming's quite common with autistic people, especially the higher on the spectrum you get. It's because they find it so difficult to express their emotion. They do a lot of hand shaking, hand waving, unusual movements with their hand.
Oh, right.
They'll look at things out of the side of their eye like this.
Okay.
So my son often does this. He'll look at that, but he won't actually turn to face it. He'll just look out the side of his eye. And it's a way of managing emotion sometimes. And the emotion can be fear, it can be anger, it can be excitement. My son jumps up and down a lot and waves his arms. And when he's a toddler, it's quite cute. When you're standing next to him at a music concert, which he loves going to, and he's now
the same
like,
height.
yeah, he's the same height as me, a couple of stone heavier, and you can see people like, you know, turning their head and looking at him. Which is why, for example, we always wear the sunflower lanyard with him when he's out, just so people immediately think.
What's the sunflower lanyard?
It's very popular. You probably see them at airports sometimes where people wear the lanyard and they're getting express sort of check-ins, etc. And it's meant to be, and it does cover a lot of disabilities, but from an autism perspective, some autistic people want real fixed routine, can't queue very well, can't wait very well.
Right.
And it's a way of people easily recognising that someone's got some kind of disability, particularly if they're not in a wheelchair.
Right. Because it's invisible, really,
Yes,
isn't
it is invisible.
Yeah.
And, but then when you start stimming, you're thinking, well, what is that person doing? But I mean, if he's got the sunflower lanyard on, then... And it again, when his language has always been really limited. But if he walked in here now, it'd ask you what your name was, how old you were, and then he'd tell you what year you were born. So but he'll do that to random people in the street, and you can, again, the fact that he's got a sunflower lanyard sort of stops the potential. Who's this person? Who are you? What are you asking me this for?
Okay. Understood. So it's a way of sort of communicating to people silently that, Okay, but it covers all kinds of disabilities.
It does, yeah. A lot of people use it. And you've seen the WCs now. Not every disability is visible. It's almost a side element of that.
So how was it for you when you started? Well, when you were working and you had your son, at what point did you notice that he was different?
It was very early on.
Really?
It's again, when you have children, you have all these regular tests and visits from health workers, and they start monitoring in the red book about weight, etc. But then ultimately it moves on to communication skills and interaction, and that's where it tends to come out if you're diagnosed very early.
Right. Is that through the NHS then? Just regular checkups?
All regular checkups, okay. And then you end up getting referred. But yeah, he was very non-verbal. His patterns of play were very repetitive, not very expressive or creative. It was all about matching and putting blocks in certain, and he was very good at that, all the pattern matching and that, but he wasn't doing anything more creative. And then that's when he started getting referred, and I think he ultimately got a diagnosis when he was very young, 4 years old.
Right. Yeah. And then when you were going into work managing that, how did you cope day to day, because your commute's quite long? You and your wife both work full time.
Yeah.
You've got 2 kids. So what support did you get?
Yeah, so it was a different period of my life. So at this point, I lived in East Anglia.
Oh, okay.
And it's my ex-wife's son.
Okay.
But again, it was a very similar situation. I was commuting an hour for work. We both worked full time. I suppose as a parent, you go through a number of different stages. There's a bit of shock, then a bit of denial, then a bit of what did I do wrong? And then it's, right, there must be a cure. And all these, again, depending, what the severity is, when it actually happens, and those sort of phases can be different time periods for different people. I know a number of people now who've got young children who've been diagnosed with autism at different spectrums, and you can almost see them going through the same emotions. So you go through, there must be a cure. And then at some point, with me in particular, the sort of switch clicks that, well, actually, I just need to reset my expectations as to what Jarvis wants, what Jarvis needs, and what is a good outcome for Jarvis here.
Right, so that's the final step of acceptance.
I think so.
What period was that for you? How old was he when you sort of started to realise this is...
Probably be getting up towards 10 or 11 then, because, again, with neurodiversity, it's things that you can get diagnosed early, but then you can take different progression paths. So it may well be that he'd become very verbal by the time he got to 8, 9, 10. As it happened, he was still very non-verbal. He was in nappies until he was probably 11 or 12. Ended up going to specialist autistic schools, which helped massively. And I think a big choice as well is try to decide what the best education path is. Because for some children, it's best to still stay in a mainstream environment.
Okay.
Either in class supported or in a separate unit. Whereas for others, they need to go to a more specialist school.
Right.
And I think some schools are too generic for that. I remember one of the first special schools he went to, it was a mixture of physical disabilities and neurodiverse disabilities. And they were mixed in the same class.
Very varied.
Yeah, and the people with physical disabilities, a lot of them were very neurotypical, and we try to teach them alongside someone that's as neurodiverse, and we quickly realised that that definitely wasn't the way forward for him. And ultimately, that's why I've ended up north. It was we relocated from Cambridgeshire to Barnsley to be in a region that had a National Autistic Society school.
Interesting.
And then went through the battle with the local authority to actually get in place there. Because again, then it all comes down to funding.
Right.
And I suppose back to your original question, because I've rambled on a bit there.
Sorry.
You've got all that playing on your mind whilst you're still doing your day job.
It's a lot.
Yeah, so it is a challenge. And don't get me wrong, you know, there might be other parents that have got, you know, the child might be ill, the child might not be getting on at school. They've got the same issues. It was just, it felt like a big battle at times to get what we thought was the right level of support that he needed.
And that is why you've moved up north for
Yeah.
Jarvis, and to be in the best environment for
Yeah.
him.
Yeah.
Even though you're currently working in Manchester, so your commute is fairly long,
Yeah.
but you're still committed to that.
Oh, yeah. So
So it's-
Jarvis has now progressed. He's 27 years old. He lives in a supported living placement. So it's like a converted building split into individual flats. He's in one flat, but there's 24-hour workers on site all the time to care for his needs. So they're trying to make him independent. He'll never live independently. And it talked a little bit earlier about, you know, those different phases. You almost think, yeah, when he was 14, 15, well, he might still get some kind of a job and live independently. And then as he gets older and you see the level of change in him, you sort of, again, you're just constantly resetting expectations.
Yeah.
He's really happy. If I
That's
brought him
the
in here
main
now,
thing,
he'd be a
isn't it?
really happy, he's a really happy young man. And that's part of the thing about being a parent is reset your expectations. Don't try and project, you know, will he play for England? You know, will he be a successful businessman? Whatever it might be, is he happy is the main priority.
That's
That's the
really
key
nice,
thing.
Craig. I think a lot of parents could take a leaf out of your book if their child is neurodivergent or not. I think that's really an important point. As long as they're happy, that's all that matters.
Exactly,
isn't it?
yeah.
Happy and healthy.
I suppose the one other point from like growing up and raising Jarvis was the effect it had on his sibling, on his sister, Jasmine.
Yes, I was going to ask you about Jasmine. So what's the age gap?
Yeah, so 18 months.
Okay.
Jasmine's 18 months older. For the first year or so, there wasn't really a significant difference because she was 18 months older. He was baby, you know, growing into a toddler. But then as Jarvis started showing differences, getting diagnosed, etc., I've always likened it to the fact that she ended up being an only child, but with
Yeah.
nowhere near the attention that an only child normally gets.
Yeah.
Because naturally, as a parent, you divert your attention
To the one that really
to the one
needs
that
it.
yeah. And she's never said that she felt neglected, but I'll look back now and think, you know, she clearly didn't get as much of the attention that she should and could have had.
She must
it's
have
just
been
natural.
quite grown up for her age as
Yeah.
well, because she had to sort of parent in certain ways as well.
Yeah,
Be
exactly.
really responsible so that you had less worries on you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, one of his main issues with Jarvis is he's growing up was he'd actually attack her as well. So from about the age of 5 or 6, he'd just constantly go and grab her hair, and even ultimately it led to biting, and that went all the way through into early teens. So
Wow.
again, she was even more removed that she'd have to go and lock herself in a room sometimes, which ultimately was why, you know, we thought there's got to be a different way of doing this. So relocation, we put him in a school where he'd stay in the school all week, including
Right.
sleepover, and then just come home weekends to try and help manage
Okay.
the situation and give Jasmine a chance to
A childhood.
actually-
And
yeah.
yeah. And how is she now? Does
She's
she
fabulous,
see-
yeah.
Is she up north with you?
No, she's in
Actually.
London. She's a
Oh,
graphic
okay.
designer.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, very creative, dyslexic.
Okay.
And again, it's a stepdaughter as well. So I've remarried. I've now got 5 children.
Wow.
Yeah, 2 children, 3 stepchildren. But yeah,
Gosh.
my stepdaughter's again dyslexic, but they tend to be really good with creativity then as well. My wife's head of student support at Leeds Arts University, so her full-time job is making sure that students who are neurodiverse or disabled have access to all the best facilities they can do, and they've
great.
got any adjustments they need to successfully do their course. And
That's
because it's Arts
amazing.
University, again, there's lots of dyslexic people in
Yeah.
there. It's a really, again, whether there must be loads of studies that have done it, but linking creativity with dyslexia there's a real strong connection there.
I didn't know that. Just different type of intelligence, isn't
Yeah,
it?
exactly.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's another way of putting it. So obviously we've talked about the different support that you have when you're a child, and then the support you can have when you're at university if you're on the spectrum. How does that translate to the workplace for people? Let's talk about you first. So you didn't know for many years that you were autistic. Did you ever have anyone around you in the workplace that was autistic or dyslexic or neurodivergent in any way?
I don't think I did in the early years. I definitely do have now.
Yeah.
And actively encourage it now. I think one of the issues with that question, I suppose, is that historically it's been really hard for people who are overtly neurodiverse to actually get into the workplace in the first place.
Okay.
I think that's definitely changing.
Yeah.
And hopefully part of this chat today is just trying to promote that.
Yeah.
But yeah, there was probably, I have seen people like further on in my career as I've sort of hit my mid-30s and into my 40s, but they tended to be people that had been specifically placed as part of a charity.
Right.
I mean, I used to use a charity called Remploy.
Okay.
I don't think they exist now. Well, we used to, if we wanted a new recruit, we'd go to them first because they specifically dealt with people who struggled to get into the workplace because they were neurodiverse.
Right.
So you'd sort of use them as your first choice provider if you wanted to fill a vacancy. It's positive discrimination, but ultimately, when you've got something that's so embedded in culture, you almost have to positively discriminate for a while to allow it to become the norm. You can't just, this is what we're going to do from now on, and we'll pick the best candidate.
It's formalising that step, isn't it?
Yeah.
Of getting them in, and they're taking responsibility of finding the people, making sure they're prepared for the interview, etc., and then it's all formalised.
And they support them as well. So when they're doing their placement, because again, sometimes it might be a placement, sometimes it might be towards a longer term contract, but they'll come in on a regular basis and help, act as that go between you and them. If the person involved feels like they can't ask or say something, they'd come in and say, we've spoken to Kat. They're really struggling with the noise in the office. Is there any way we can have some noise cancelling headphones, for example?
Okay.
So there's lots of really small time interventions that can make a really big
great.
difference. Yeah.
Have we had that at all on our?
I'm not sure Remploy exists, and again, obviously since I've known I'm coming to do this chat, I'm thinking I just need to revisit this again and find some more organisations out there that can help us proactively get neurodiverse people.
I know
into
that
the
you
workplace.
guys so you're on the Cadence CMO with us. How long have you been on that?
4 years now.
4 years, blimey.
Yeah.
Is that 4 years at Network Plus?
Yeah, I joined.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've heard a few stories through the grapevine of you guys employing people that are disabled through different schemes. But I think you had a blind person with you?
Yeah. Registered blind, yeah.
Yes.
He came and did a placement with my team, luckily.
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah, only for a couple of months. But again, it was more about him getting used to the workplace environment.
Yeah.
And also was as a business recognising, right, I've got someone in who's, registered blind. Obviously had some visibility, but as far as, the official documentation goes, registered blind, what adaptations should we be making for this individual in the workplace?
Okay. Great. So there's definitely room to grow in that area.
Absolutely,
for the Cadence CMO at least.
Yeah.
So it's an inclusive environment where these kind of ideas are fostered and encouraged.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
It's just finding the right provider.
Yeah.
That's really good.
And also adapting our own recruitment. So if there's no
Yes.
provider available, if you're going to have an interview with people, it's making sure it's neurodiverse friendly. And there's lots of different ways of doing that. I suppose initially it's making sure that one of the traits of autism is about having that routine and knowing what's coming ahead. So making sure you share the structure of the interview in advance, whether it be formal or informal.
Okay.
I've always preferred doing more informal interviews anyway, because I don't think you get the best out of a
People
individual.
get too prepared, don't they?
Yeah,
and they
and
sort of freeze up.
Too nervous. That's not what I'm going to ask you to do when you're actually sitting in a workplace environment. I want to see the real you. But again, that might not be perfect for someone who's autistic, that actually they want it really structured, or they want to know that it's going to be more informal. So making sure in advance that any questions that we're asking aren't biased towards neurotypical people, and even the answers that are given, try and put yourself in the interviewee's shoes that right, they might have interpreted that slightly differently. and sort of try and see how they've answered the question from how their brain might have interpreted it.
And give them a second chance.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
That's important. We all deserve one. So in terms of your hiring practices for your team, that's something that you would like to sort of introduce and foster. Do you think that there are people out there that would be too scared to approach this because they're unfamiliar with the subjects? What would you say to them?
Well, definitely I think there are people that are too scared. I mean, what would I say to them? There was a ONS, Office of National Statistics survey last year. Adults with autism, there's only 22% that are actually in employment.
Wow.
If you compare that to the wider population, that's a massive difference.
It's huge.
And there's a massive untapped potential there. You know, I mean, I suppose I'm lucky that I work in data and systems, so neurodiversity is actually really useful for us. For someone, if you want someone that's hyper-focused, great attention to detail, great with numbers, you're probably looking for someone that's a bit more neurodiverse than...
Probably really reliable as well.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Really reliable and perfectionist with the detail.
And I suppose, back to, what should we do? I think we need to, and part of this podcast is doing that, I think we need to make people more aware of what different types of neurodiversity are. Because again, comparing someone with autism to someone with dyslexia, you know, you might end up getting a CV that you think is not that well written. Well, you know, actually, is it still worth getting that person and having a chat to them?
Absolutely. And how, like, in terms of highlighting that so people know that actually there's a bit of dyslexia here. It's not someone who's just, you know, written it in a rush.
Yeah.
It's that you see it on there going, I am dyslexic, but my skills are...
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
And being like, okay, well, actually you deserve a phone call for that because you've put yourself forward, haven't you?
Exactly, yeah, and they've been really clear. And it's a skill. So when you list your skills, dyslexia is a skill because there's loads of positive
really
traits.
good.
Same with autism.
That.
Yeah, that should be in there with your skills.
What about the other ones? ADHD, dyscalculia,
dyspraxia. They'll all have relevant skills that can be brought into a workforce environment. And the other thing I'd say that, you know, if you're a hiring manager, I'll use a football analogy. Sorry.
I'm sure the watchers will appreciate it.
Well, yeah, some of them will, some of them won't, possibly. You put 11 people on a pitch. It's a team. You don't put 11 goalkeepers on a pitch. You don't put 11 strikers on a pitch. You want people with different skills in different positions. That's what makes a good team. And that's where a lot of people with neurodiversity, they'll make a great right winger. They'll make a great left back. They'll make a great inverted right back who can pivot into midfield.
I like that.
I'm getting too technical.
That's good. Have you used that before?
I haven't. No, I did make that one on the spot.
Did you really? That felt very natural. Practiced.
But listen to Pep. That's what it is.
Oh, right. Okay. Nice. So when you joined Network Plus, did you feel that it was something that you would talk openly about, or is it something that you try to hide or cover up?
Times have changed, so it's a lot more. It's a lot more accepted to be neurodiverse, a lot more understood. I was very fortunate in the fact that senior team at Network Plus, particularly Stuart Fraser, Dan Holland, I'd worked for at previous companies, so I've known them and worked for them since Jarvis was 4. So they've supported me. You know, they've been integral in giving me time, space, freedom, support through that journey that we went through. So almost at the point coming to Network Plus, it was this is a safe space for me anyway already, because I know what the leadership is and what their views are on supporting people, and also whether it's parents or individuals that have got that are neurodiverse. So yeah, very fortunate.
That's good. I wonder, on that note, if you've heard of CAFT. CAFT. It's a charity that Dan's been involved with for a few years, and it's for children that have special needs, and it's a farm in Cheshire.
Oh yes,
yes.
Okay, yeah, I do recognise. I didn't recognise it from the actual. I was trying to work out what the acronym was. CAFT. I was like,
I don't know. Actually,
my autistic was brain, but I must know this. I must know this.
Yeah, I think it's always been something quite close to their heart, hasn't it? Really, at a senior level. So I think that kind of drops down, and it's really nice to see that they've been so helpful and supportive of you over the years. Do you think that your neurodiversity is a superpower, and how has that empowered you in your career?
100%. I mean, I would not be in the position I'm in today if it wasn't for my neurodiversity. For me, I was lucky that I managed to utilise my really positive traits from a neurodiversity and maximise them and ultimately make a career out of them. And whilst I was doing that, understanding how to better manage, control the negative traits, but also get support from people, because ultimately they don't go away. It's not I'll take this pill and I'll cure this tomorrow. I'll stop feeling massively socially anxious at meetings. You know, if I ever went to one of these conferences where you're then told to go and mingle at dinner time, I absolutely detest it. You know, I'm the person, if you go to a social event like dinner party or any kind of party, you'll probably find me either washing up, cleaning up, or playing football with the kids, unless I'm around a lot of people that I know quite well. Once I get to know people a little bit, I'm okay. I can open up a bit, but new people, introductions and small talk, it just find it really hard.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. So that's probably why being in a very community-based workplace like Network Plus, where everyone seems to know each other and work together for a number of years in different utilities backgrounds, it's quite suitable for you.
Absolutely, lots of familiar faces.
Yeah, that's really good. So what do you think we could do more of? It sounds like we're doing quite a lot as a business already in terms of having an inclusive culture. Is there anything else that you think we could improve of in the future?
And I think we've covered quite a bit today, particularly around firstly getting more people in that are neurodiverse and potentially some kind of positive discrimination process to allow us to bring more people in, even if it's just on placements, on work experience, etc. Because I think that does two things. One, it builds the confidence of the people that are neurodiverse, that they are welcome in the workplace, and makes them more open to actually apply for jobs. But secondly, the people that are already there in the workplace, the likes of the me's and you's, it opens them up to the positive benefits of having a neurodiverse person working alongside you. Only other thing is probably workplace adjustments. So if dyslexia, for example, a lot of people find documents a lot easier to read if they're printed on a certain colour paper. So blue, for example, is quite a popular one, but people have different preferences. So again, should we start asking people that work for us, you know, I'm always giving you this form to fill in, or this, would you like it on a different colour paper?
Just a bit of kindness, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
An extra thought. You've obviously done a really great job in your career so far, and your undiagnosed autism has had a huge part to play in that. What do you see yourself doing in the future? What are your ambitions? Where would you like to be?
If I talked about career progression, I'm absolutely delighted with where I am. You know, I'm almost like pinch myself once a week to think I've got to this position, and I'm really thankful for that. So career-wise, I'm probably happy to continue at this level. And you always need people that are happy at whatever level they've reached. Continue to have a fantastic work-life balance. I go to a lot of music concerts as well with my wife, so I want to continue to be able to do that alongside having a good career. Doing this podcast has really sparked or relit a fire around getting more knowledge, acceptance, understanding, and willingness to get neurodiverse people more into the workplace, and more recognition for that. But yeah, probably the rest is
unwritten.
Unwritten. Yeah, get through to retirement age and have some money to spend on things.
Rock and roll.
Yeah. I've done that wrong.
Well, rock on, Craig. Thanks for coming in. It's been really nice to speak to you.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you for being so honest.
Thank you.